This show is brought to you by DF Studios Limited. Whether you're a business owner or entrepreneur, DF Studios will guide and assist you on the best ways to promote your brand digitally, in addition to creating visitor and customer generating content like blogs, social media posts, videos, and even podcasts like this one you're listening to right now. Visit dfstudiosltd.com or hit up info@dfstudiosltd.com for more info. Let us talk about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, which is easily one of the most highly anticipated films of 2022, right? I should say myself, Summer, and Ricardo, we talked about the first film when it came out in 2018.
Yes.
Absolutely enjoyed it back then. And of course, well, I don't know about you guys, but I did a recap of it, just in preparation for this movie here.
Same.
And yeah,
same.
I think that it still holds up for the most part, though. Absolutely enjoyable, right? So, of course, going into Wakanda Forever, you have to take into consideration the fact that, yes, Chadwick Boseman is no longer with us, right? And you can imagine how hard it was for everybody on set, even behind the scenes, to even put this out, right? I can't even begin to imagine how Ryan Coogler felt, right? Doing this, because I mean, this is his first sequel, right? And
fun fact, I actually know about that. He opened up in a recent interview that he almost left the project. Like because he had been co-developing it with Chadwick, and they'd been bouncing ideas off each other and writing it right up into his death. When he got the news that Boseman had passed away, and he learned with the rest of us, fun fact, he almost left the project. Like, he was seriously considering turning it over and walking away, but he only stuck with it because he wanted to do it as a tribute to Boseman. Right. That was why he stuck around. But yeah, he was devastated. He almost left.
Right.
Is that the Tanashi Coates podcast, or was it a different interview?
I think that might be the one. I'm not sure which one. I know that it was circulating. I mean, he's made no secret about how, even from the first trailers, like how this is a tribute to Chadwick Boseman, as well as being a sequel to the original film. But I think that was maybe in the interview we opened up and said, yeah, I almost left. I seriously considered leaving the project. And like, I don't know if he implied filmmaking altogether or just this franchise, but I wasn't sure.
Right. So when it came to this movie here, right, and we have to take into consideration that this is the final film or chapter, if you will, of the Phase 4 era of Marvel Studios, right, of their output, right. Yeah, I mean, we have to bring up that fact that this is the end of
Phase 4, right? I have some stuff to say about Phase 4 in general, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Because
I
feel have to. Reasons and things, but later.
Yeah, right? So, we were getting the output, the Moon Knights and the Miss Marvel, all that kind of stuff. And then, we will hear through the grapevine that we will get a Wakanda Forever trailer. And, it dropped. The first one dropped and blew everyone's minds, myself included, boy.
Yes.
The music was what really gripped me, just hearing Ludwig Göransson's music. Just so operatic, just so emotional, boy. And how it reworked Kendrick Lamar's All Right. And Thames' version of No Woman No Cry, how it just merged those two together. I'll talk about music in my review, right? But yeah, it just blew everyone's mind. We were all excited for this, right? And the second trailer dropped and gave us more stuff and pretty much spoiled who the new Black Panther will be. But it's like, all right, well, some of us kind of, like, in my case, I wanted to be surprised. I wanted to see it for myself. I thought the film itself would have shown me. But the trailer kind of spoiled. I was like, all right, well, okay,
Most comic book readers would have already known who it was going to be, because that logic. It was also the logical step from a cinematic level. But if you read the comics, you knew. You didn't even need them to tell you. You knew who it was going to be.
Exactly. So what we'll do here, right? We'll do a spoiler-free section, right? So we'll share spoiler-free thoughts, and then we'll jump into the spoilers so we can kind of expound on the facts or the issues that we bring up in our spoiler-free section, right? So, Tracy, if you don't mind, could just do sort of a quickish run through of what Wakanda Forever is about?
Right. So, Wakanda Forever. In the film, we see a new world power rises. We deal with the aftermath of the king. King T'Challa is gone, and how that affects the people around him, namely his sister, Princess Shuri. And we also have to deal with the outside forces. So we have a new world power rising from the ocean, but we also have the fact that because King T'Challa, the Black Panther, is gone, we have what we would normally see in our world. Every colonizer on the planet is excited that this is a time to actually go out there and do stuff. And so now we have to deal with the repercussions of that. How do you deal with pain and grief at the same point in time? And also, how do you keep the legacy of someone you love going even after they're gone? And that was the 2 hour and 41-minute film in a synopsis.
That is Wakanda.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So I will kick things off, right? So just to keep in mind, right? So just to get the obvious out of the way, yes, this would have been a tough project for Ryan and his team to pull off, right? And I would say for the most part, they did the thing, they came through. I mean, everybody just showed up to work, but everybody came, did their damn thing though. Whether it's Letitia Wright, who I was just surprised at how much screen time that she got, right? I mean, of course, compared to the first film, right? But yeah, she just has so much emotional lifting to do, man. And I thought that she killed it, man. Same thing with Angela Bassett, man. I mean, the moments with her when she's on screen, though, wow, powerful, right? This one meltdown scene involving her and Okoye playing Mama Gill, Night
Mhm.
Guerrero, boy, that one was like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
whew,
That was a
felt
moment.
chills, right?
Yeah.
I also like the world building in this, right? Whether it's exploring Namor, right, and his group, right, exploring Talokan, right, his kingdom and kingdom and whatnot, right, and introducing Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, right, into the story, and it kind of it fits like her
It
inclusion in this, right?
does.
It
Yeah.
surprisingly does, right? So
What was surprising? I didn't think she would have been that central to the story.
yeah,
Because what I
yeah.
what I thought was I thought Michaela Cole's character Anika was going to be the more central figure. No, she was the side character. I was like, oh, because Michaela Cole's already a reasonably well established star.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
At least compared to Riri Williams, who's a newcomer. No? So I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
They
okay, good.
say there's saying that her series that is actually filming right now is a literal direct kind of sequel, a direct from. So after her adventures in Wakanda and the events surrounding Wakanda Forever, we meet up with Ironheart and Riri Williams in her series, and
Right.
stuff unfolds there. So it kind of really does set up
Mhm.
like a bigger for her.
Well, and which tie that and like those 2 points tie into like one of the things I quite appreciated, which I mean relevant is when the first of Taika Waititi's Thor films came out, and they just kept announcing so and so has been cast as this, and so much has been cast as this, and I kept finding myself going, oh wow, they're putting a lot into this movie. Is it all going to fit? And then it somehow fit. And then when they did the same thing with Love and Thunder, and I was like, oh, they're definitely going to fit it this time, and then they didn't. Like that film felt clunky and overstuffed.
Yeah.
And then with this film, right? Like we're getting up to the movie. We hear that Talalakan's gonna. We hear that the Talakan stuff's gonna be in it. We know there's gonna be setups for other MCU projects. We hear that Riri Williams as Ironheart's gonna be in it. And I found up until I sat down to watch it, I was like, how are they going to put all this in and actually make it flow, right?
Yeah.
And I was genuinely surprised how well they did that, especially given the circumstances of the rewrites. Especially her inclusion. Like she was one of my favorite characters. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
It's a movie that feels like it actually uses its runtime in that regard, because it actually it gives all of the different elements it's bringing in space to breathe.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about time in a bit, right? But yeah, acting is strong throughout though. I was surprised to see Michaela Cole in this as well. I was like, hey, all right, I reviewed, I May Destroy You. I really, really love that show, right? I was glad to see her there, right? Everybody had their time to shine, right? Coogler once again shows why he is one of the, well, I should say, should be like one of the most talked about directors right now, but because he stepped up to the plate, he did his damn thing, but he came through with a really impressive sequel here. From action sequences to the visuals and whatnot, it's great, right? Music, I'll just close up with music, right? The music for this too. I mean, my boy Ludwig Göransson came, did it. Um, it's different compared to what we heard, sorry, from the last film, right? It's a lot darker, a lot more intense and whatnot. And thanks to Tracy for putting me onto the soundtrack, right? Because I was
Mm-hmm.
really impressed in how they actually incorporated some of the songs from the
I
soundtrack.
love
I
it.
talk about the various artists one, right? Into this, right? Case in point, the Abolis Bajo El Mar, right? That song, right? When I first ever heard it, I was like, this sounds like something out of some 70s like Spanish horror film though. It sounds so haunting though, right? And they use it in the moment, slight spoiler, involving Nemo's backstory, man. And it's the moment near the end.
Oh.
Tracy, you know what I talk about, right? Where
Yes,
you
very
hear
much yes.
where you hear the
Yes.
singer
When you blow
whispering,
the
and then
blowing
you do the when that
because
moment
it's
coming, I was like, all right, yes, I like that. I like that. When that moment
it's
came
kind
in,
of
I was
like
like, that
when
was
you have
perfect.
a ritual or something and somebody is doing a prayer or whatever it is like that and they
Yeah, and you
blow.
just keep blowing candles like, and you just whisper something, and then when that
Yes,
came in, but I was like, I get chills. I get chills. It is easily one of the best songs in this album, bar none, right? I even like how they use this song Con La Brisa, right? I know
that
that's one
is that is
song
that is
with the
seared in my brain. That is
yeah that
seared in
that
my
is
brain.
during the reveal of the underwater
Uh,
kingdom. That
Capricorn.
really how to say this really heavenly music that you hear, and my god, the vocals for this boy, my god, who it is boy,
For the
the
Quish, I think
Quish, yeah,
I
that's
know
that's how
I'm
you pronounce the name.
butchering it, but for the Quish and Ludwig collaborated on that.
Yeah, it just sounds so gorgeous boy. And even like the Afrobeats cuts and whatnot, right? How they were worked into it. Also there's a kind of a blink in the miss moment now where they had interlude, right, which is performed by Stormzy, right? Shout out to Stormzy, right? And somehow they transition that into Alone from Burna Boy.
Right.
I actually like tap my friend next to me. I was like, you see how they do that? Like they actually like transition real smooth, but like, wait, okay. It was real good. It was real good. I won't like just the use of music here was great. It really stuck out more than the first film, right? Even though you had Kendrick Lamar and TDE, on board, right? Although to be fair, I still prefer that album because that was more hip hop and R&B oriented, right? But this one was different because it incorporated more Afrobeat and more I don't want to say well, yeah, Spanish language music into it. That was really smart, right? That
Mhm.
being said, though, I'm gonna say something really controversial here, but I want you to just listen to me for a bit, and then I'll wrap up the story. While I was watching this, right, while I was appreciating everything that I was seeing, right, and I understood, how difficult it would have been to put all this together, there's a part of me that still feels like this should have been a series. I'll explain. I'll explain.
Mm.
What this show really reminds me of, oddly enough, is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where you have a main character, right? A character that's much beloved and had a big impact on the MC, right? Who is gone now, and now you have somebody has to come in and fill those shoes, right? We know who the character is going to be. We'll get to that in the spoiler section, right? But we have to wait a while for the build up and all these. Basically, what I'm trying to say, you're taking these side characters, right? By introducing new characters into the fold, and just seeing how they're dealing with this person's law, with the loss of this person, basically, right? And who's
Right.
gonna come in to fill those shoes? Reminds me a lot of what's going on with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? Well, who's gonna take the mantle of Captain America, right? And eventually, at the end, we see who it is, right? It's Falcon, right? But at the same time, they incorporate other subplots. You had Baron Zemo, you had the Dora Milaje for a bit, you had other players and other things that was going on, right? So if I have one gripe, the one major gripe with this show, though, and there's a few others I'll get into with the spoiler review, right? Is it feels kind of cluttered, man. It feels like there's a lot of spinning places, a lot of things going on, and not all the time does it feel that it doesn't always flow as freely as it should, man. Sometimes it could feel a little clunky at times, man.
Right.
And it's even worse now because of the runtime as well too. I mean, yeah, a show like this needs to be long, right? But there's so much moving parts in it though, where yeah, you will feel, yeah, it's use of pacing, right? And I think this is where the show kind of stumbles, man. Unfortunately, right? Again, I understand why, because you're bringing in all these new characters and you're reintroducing old characters, and you want to give everybody a moment to shine, right? And I appreciate that, right? but it does unfortunately kind of take away from what I felt the point was, whereas okay, who is going to fill those shoes of or boots, whatever, of Black Panther, right? Now, if it was a series now, wait a minute, if it was a series now, you would have had more enough time to explore Okoye and Shuri and Ramonda and everyone else, right? And well, I would say the one character that honestly I felt didn't need to be in it, unfortunately, was Everett Ross, who is played by Martin Freeman. I felt like his moments, while I understand why they did, it's just like, well, all right, we have them there because we made fun of him because he's the white colonizer, blah blah blah. But I just felt like his moments kind of took away from what the point of the movie was, right? And even like near the end, like his last moments, it didn't really like tie back to what the main theme of the show was about. He was just there for the sake of being there and fortune, right?
Right.
But I understand why he's there because he's a fan favorite, right? But if it was a series format now, then yeah, you could explore these characters well, and you could have a much cleaner resolution, right? I'll talk about the conclusion in my spoiler section, right? But it's so funny that me talking about it being a series, right? Because because of the amount of TV shows that we've gotten from the MCU for the past couple of years, right? You would think that something like this could have just been, Wakanda Forever, the series, like the mini series or whatever it is, right? But because of unfortunately of what happened with Chadwick Boseman, it kind of makes sense that something like this should be a film, and because of how
Right.
widely loved that first film was, and I guess it's because it didn't have a proper sequel with Chadwick. That's why we had to go the theatrical route. But I feel like if in hindsight, if we did have that sequel, if we had that film that both Ryan and Chadwick wanted to make, yeah, then we would have a TV series that would have been called Wakanda Forever. We could have explored the other side characters, but because the situation is like, well, yeah, we kind of had to do this. So long story short, it really does feel like it's ideas for upcoming films and whatnot in this Black Panther series kind of put together into this one film, and at times it does feel like it's all over the place. But I do understand the situation behind it, though. Where it's like, yeah, we want to do this send off. We want to do this proper tribute to him, right? So in the end, not all of it works. The narrative is kind of hit or miss for me, though. But there's a lot to take away from it, though, and the heart and emotion of the film is still there. From a visual and sonic perspective, I mean, the show still works, though. But I just felt like, honestly, that just narrative wise, what would have helped is if it had like a couple more rewrites and maybe just kind of structure things a little bit more cohesive. So instead of things kind of feeling all over the place, but that's just my thoughts on it, right?
Right.
But so yeah, that's my kind of long ramble on it, though. But
Well,
just
counterpoint.
Go on, yeah.
Well, counterpoint, because I do disagree with you, and I feel like I should articulate why.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I definitely, no, I get it. No, it's mainly, here's the thing, right? While I enjoyed both WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I think they're the only, I don't remember what other DC series I even watched, because I kind of stopped.
Oh, you didn't watch Loki?
Yeah, I did watch Loki. Okay.
At least Loki, like, I mean,
yeah, definitely.
I would say those are the three. Those are the top three.
Yeah, I stopped watching the MCU series after a bit because, with the exception of Loki and WandaVision, because there's like a meta reason it's the way it is, I kept watching the shows going, my God, these could have been tightened up into movies. Like, why?
Right.
Every, like, especially Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for me, like, there is a lot about Falcon and the Winter Soldier that is fun to watch in the moment, but then afterwards, rethinking it and revisiting it, I was like, man, clean this up, cut this subplot there, tighten this up, and this would have been like this would have been fine as a movie. But on top of that, I think part of the reason that like I definitely come to the defense of Black Panther having so much and like being a movie as opposed to a series is, again, coming off the brutal disappointment of Thor: Love and Thunder and seeing what happens when you have a movie that is so stuffed and is so busy, right? Every scene in Thor: Love and Thunder, stuff is happening. New stuff is being introduced. New stuff is being explained. I don't know if the rumors that Marvel mandated that the movie be under 2 hours are true. If it is, that is probably where that film's big weaknesses come from. Like, and like in my mind, and I'm directly comparing Wakanda Forever to Thor: Love and Thunder, there are a lot of messy things. I blame all of those on the rewrite because, again, this was originally supposed to be for Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, and there's a lot of that I can see, especially as a screenwriter and someone with screenwriting experience. There's a lot of times I'm like, yep, this was originally meant to be a T'Challa scene that has been reworked and like redone to fit a new context, and like there's plenty of, and it kind of goes back to my feelings about Shuri as our new protagonist, but that's a separate issue. But as far as like balancing so many characters and subplots, yes, you get Everett Ross, who doesn't need to be there and could have been, aside from providing a little exposition, could have been cut. But for the most part, especially compared directly to Thor: Love and Thunder, I feel like it's better paced and it does a better job of balancing all the stuff going on. Because unlike Thor: Love and Thunder, where every new scene is introducing new stuff and there's big set pieces happening, Wakanda Forever has a lot more breathing scenes. Like a lot more quieter moments and a lot more moments where characters are just interacting or breathing or processing the stuff that has happened. Unlike Love and Thunder, which is just boom, 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 stuff happens with no processing, no breathing, except for like the one scene on the ship, I guess. But even then, like that scene is it's so rushed in there. It's difficult to feel like any breathing is actually going on in that scene. Wakanda Forever has almost like, if you were to break the film up, I feel like, into how much of it is set piece and how much of it is breathing, there are a lot more quiet sequences and a lot more breathing scenes and a lot more moments where it genuinely feels like the film is taking its time to process all of the stuff happening. Like, look at the amount of time between when we first see Namor and the second time we see Namor, because the film is genuinely breathing in between those moments in that particular way. Is just kind of my point. Like obviously when we get to more individual thoughts, I have my own critiques of the film, but pacing for me is not one of them.
Right. Okay. I totally understand. And folks, before you unsubscribe to from a YouTube channel and stop listening to me. This is just a first viewing. I really do want to see this again. And I really want to take note of, just the structure of the film.
Yes.
Even more. I really, this film in general, deserves more than one viewing. I will say that right off the bat, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, me in particular, I really do want to see it again because I have a feeling like the nitpicks that I have, may not be as they won't be like scratching the roof of my mouth as all that if I were to watch it again. That's what I'm trying to say. Right, so Ricardo, spoiler-free review. Tell me how wrong I am.
I kind of halfway agree with you, but no, I'm on CC side on this one. This movie, it is clumsy. There's a lot of clumsiness in it at times. But no, I was surprised as to where they went with it and what they did with it as it is as an arc. For the most part, I couldn't get myself to hate this. And again, when it was, I'll admit the true strength of the film does lie in the tribute to Chadwick, right? As a tribute to Chadwick, perfect, amazing, really, really well done. Even the kind of little bullshitty loophole they do at the end, which we could get into the debate about, right? I still even thought that wasn't half bad in terms of its solution to a problem. Let's just call it that, right? But in terms of an arc and making it work, there's a lot of repetition, a lot of the same problems the first film had. Like in my opinion, Okoye had more or less the same problem that Wakabi had in the first film in terms of how much time and effort it should be catered towards that amount of emotion. And ultimately, the action was, whilst a little laid back, still could have been better for what it was. I still dug it. I didn't really mind any of it in its own conceit. But yeah, it does have a lot of like remains to be seen. A lot of things that they could have done a little better and whatever it is. And again, you're not sure how much of it you think is a matter of COVID versus how much it is Chadwick not supposed to be there and all of that. And it have all of this weight in the back of your head, unfortunately. And whether or not the film should have been done at all, and it have all this drama and back and forth and bad faith takes. And look, we're gonna get a lot of bad faith takes about this movie in the future. Let's admit that. But yeah, I actually liked it for what it was, the way it was doing, and ultimately its central conceits are excellent. Like what it did with Shuri and her arc, and she effectively had to really grow up for this, and that's why a lot of it worked. Yeah, so that just me. There's some quick spoiler non-spoiler review for that.
All right, Summer, your spoiler-free thoughts on the film.
Overall, I enjoyed it. I always say I don't think of Marvel as ever making truly terrible films. Funny enough, though, even with the more heartfelt, the somber tones to that this film had. For me, I came out feeling about Wakanda Forever the exact same way I felt about the first film. And just in overall, in terms of the movie, there's some excellent stuff here. There's some visually spectacular things here, but there's also stuff that feels cluttered, stuff that feels like it maybe should have been kept for a different movie, or at least a film with a different tone to it. And it's just the special effects as well. I really struggle with why they're having so much problems with it for this particular these particular Black Panther films. So I my overall feeling for the film was the same, even though it had such a different tone, which surprised me a bit. But I did enjoy the film, and I do want to see it again, because it's really hard to, your first impressions of these movies can change quite drastically when you get a chance to really sit down and digest it instead of just gobble it all up in one go.
All right, Tracy, tell me, sorry, how wrong I am.
Wrong, very wrong. Hi. Well, first of all, let me just start by giving you all a little joke about me. I stupidly saw 180 something minutes or 160 something minutes on the website, and I thought to myself, oh, okay, because I went to see it like around 11:30, the late night showing, the Wednesday night in IMAX, and left the cinema. When I came out of the cinema and looked at my phone because it was on silent, I saw it was like 2:20 in the morning. So we basically left the cinema at like 2:30 after everything. I was like, oh my God, time. And that is when I realized how long the film was, and of course the fact that I am daft and not realizing, the amount, what the time actually meant. I will say this, and I think this more or less encapsulates how I feel about the film and the music and everything else. I will put it this way. My mother wants to go and see Avatar, The Way of Water in December. And so we will go to the cinema and sit down and watch Way of Water in the cinema. But if I didn't have to see another film for the rest of the year in cinemas, because there's stuff that's coming out on Netflix and all that other good stuff, Disenchantment on Disney Plus and all that kind of thing. But if I didn't see another film in cinemas for the rest of the year, I would not mind. I legitimately am a happy camper. I saw the film, I sat down and I watched it. I may have shouted "Que calor" when Tenoch walked onto the scene like a good few times, because I was like, okay, Namor or Namor, and we can talk about that. I love the idea of how they explained Namor, because all during the promotional material and everything like that, he's saying Namor, and I know there will be one or two comic people who will be like, actually his name is Nemo, and I was like, okay, no, there is a logic behind all of it. I love the idea of how they expressed his underwater kingdom, because Ryan himself was talking about the idea of he had seen, Ryan says this, he had seen Aquaman and he liked Aquaman, and he remembered Atlantis from growing up, that Disney show, and he wanted to do an underwater kingdom that could be on par with that, but not that Greco-Roman kind of sensibility of what Atlantis is, and the idea of doing a Mesoamerican sensibility with Talokan. That was just brilliant. I love the on-screen, let's call it, chemistry with Namor and Shuri. It really was, and let's not even talk about the music, because like I said, I have been living in Con La Brisa for since it's come out. And I want to just put a little quick plug and just say thank you, Marvel Studios, for curated albums, because we have the scores, and I love the scores. I always enjoy the scores, but also 88 Rising curated the Shang-Chi album, and that opened up your mind to hearing Korean pop music for those who may not necessarily have heard it. And then, of course, there's the Kendrick Lamar curated album, and then one could argue that James Gunn makes curated albums when he does his Guardians and even Suicide Squad and all that kind of stuff. But So there is that. So that for me is my net spoiler free thought on it. If I really didn't have to go to the cinema again for the rest of the year to see another movie, because I will be back in the cinema to see Wakanda Forever quite a few times. I'm playing it in such a way where it's like, oh, I'll bring a friend so that they can see it, or maybe my my half siblings should come and see it. But really, it's about going back and see it for like 5 times. I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. I loved it. I love what the message, at least my interpretation of the message was. I like the idea of how it plays out. And yes, we'll talk about phase 4 later on, but I maintain phase 4 has literally been about you won't go to therapy. Well, guess what? We'll make you deal with things. And so you have from Wanda all the way to Wakanda Forever, you have a vibe that keeps propelling you forward in terms of go to therapy. But I really enjoyed
No,
it.
right.
I really enjoyed it. I agree with you. There are one or two things I think that legitimately or people that did not necessarily need to be in there, because I didn't see how they pushed the story forward, even though they may be important to the overall MCU mythos. But I was like, okay, that is down. I will say between CC and Matthew, I kind of stand in the middle, because it could have been that maybe there might have been like a Marvel special presentation short, where you could have done something, maybe instead of like a 6-episode arc or a 9-episode arc, you could do some sort of like a prequel story, something that leads into where Wakanda Forever is. So by the time you get to Wakanda Forever, you don't necessarily have to dive into certain things. That could have been a thing. But I also know there's rumors circulating that there are several Wakandan-themed TV series on the way. I mean, we might have the Midnight Angels. Right. We might have some other stuff that's happening. So we'll see where that goes. But generally speaking, yes, I very much enjoyed Wakanda Forever. Like when I get up the next morning and I'm washing my wares in the quietness of it all, and I'm thinking, God, that scene and those people, that is when I know I really enjoy a thing. So that's it for me. Yeah.
All right, and CC, to close up the spoiler-free section, yeah, your thoughts on this movie here?
It's one of those. Oh, man, it's definitely proof to me that Phase 4 has been a series of unlikely surprises. There were movies that I was excited for that I turned out to be disappointing, and then there were movies that I was excited for, or like I was on the fence about or nervous about, that turned out to be really great. The film itself, there are problems, and definitely when we get into the spoiler section, and even a couple have been highlighted already, whether it's the effects or whether it's like some of the action being a little more on the casual side without having quite having the same punch as part of which I blame on like COVID condition shooting and trying to choreograph action in those types of conditions, and apparently some of the set vibes being quite weird, but things like that. But like, it's one of those movies where what it does well, it does so well that I'm not thinking about the things that didn't work for me, right? Like they're there, and I can fully acknowledge them as, yes, these are issues. Yeah, there's things, and like there's two in particular that I think hold it back. But those are less important to me than what it does well. And what it does well is it continues to, like, one of my favorite things about the first Black Panther is that it's a reauthoring of one of the older subgenres of like fantasy fiction, which is lost race fantasy. You know, the explorers go to some remote corner of the world. These white explorers go to some remote corner of the world and discover a lost group of people who have been isolated from the world, been living there this whole time. You know, we've all seen these, whether it's Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, or whether it's Tarzan and the original Edgar Rice Burroughs novels came across these every week. Whether it was, King Solomon's Mines is like one of the very first. But what I love about the first Black Panther is that it successfully reauthors this genre. So instead of being about the white explorers who find them, it's about the titular lost race. It is about a almost magical kingdom that has kept itself separate from the rest of the world, trying to not especially in the case of Wakanda, it is a kingdom that through the miracle of its existence has survived the brutal colonization of the rest of the continent in a way that few other countries ever have. Like even Ethiopia got conquered once by the Italians during the Second World War. So they're continually trying to navigate this issue. And that, I think, is one of the things that makes this franchise so special, especially since in the second one we do the same thing with another species, with another lost race. So you end up with this thing where this genre is continually being reauthored as an opportunity to imagine what certain cultures would look like if they weren't destroyed, which I think is a really powerful and beautiful thing that we can do with this genre, right? Like, in the first film, we're looking at Africa, but now in this one, we are looking at what it would have looked like if a Mesoamerican culture had survived. And also the idea that these cultures are into conflict, but not because, it's not because of any actual animosity between the two of them. It's because they both are aware that their position, like, T'Challa Khan wants to go to war because they think that Wakanda has exposed them, and if Wakanda doesn't, like if Wakanda doesn't take their side, then they're doomed. But then Wakanda but Wakanda is also convinced that T'Challa Khan will frame them for everything they've been doing in the international community, which will be all the evidence that the international community needs to go to war with Wakanda, because they're chomping at the bit to do that. And that, I think, is a fascinating conflict. Like that, it's not because there's any actual tension between these two cultures. It is specifically because of the hostile post-colonial world in which they find themselves, right? Even the one super dark moment for me was when they were literally talking about when as much as I think the Everett Ross stuff is generally weak, the bit when he's in that meeting and they're talking about ways to potentially take down Wakanda, and they mention like a infiltration destabilization type thing, which the US has such a long track record of doing, and it's like, oh god, this is the world in which Wakanda lives in, and it's brutal about that. So the movie presents this conflict as so fascinating. Like you watch it, and like people are already like, I remember seeing a post where someone was like, hot take, Namor did nothing wrong, and I was like, is that a hot take? I was on Namor's side the whole time. Like it's a situation where, and this is one of the reasons why I think the resolution of the film works so well. But no, one of the strongest entries in Phase 4 for me. The central conflict continues the themes that I liked about the first film in a pretty brilliant way. I was saying to someone that there are certain MCU films that are probably going to outlast the rest of the MCU simply because the rest of the MCU is all tied up in itself, right? Whereas there are certain films that stand out a little more than the others, and I think and are allowed to kind of be a little more filmmaker driven, especially comparing this film to Eternals, which is a movie that feels like it was meant to be more like this, but then at the last second they got cold feet, and the next thing we're getting it's a Black Knight tease. It's Harry Styles as Firefox. It's like last second, like, oh crap, people aren't going to watch this. Quick, let's throw in additions to like other stuff because maybe that'll get them interested. But this film doesn't have that lack of confidence. It's really, really refreshing. Great time. Definitely have notes, but the overall experience is one of the strongest, and especially given how messy this production was, and how much worse this film could potentially have been, I'm very glad with the movie we got.
Yeah.